afternoon/good morning. I am Steve Lookner here from Right Side Broadcasting Studios in Auburn, Alabama. This is the pre-show for the Sean Spicer press briefing, which we'll be carrying live. It's supposed to start in 36 minutes. Sometimes it starts a little late. Sometimes, like yesterday, it starts a little early. Whenever it starts, we will bring it to you live right here, and then we'll be back for the post-show after. We're going to get to, as we usually do on the pre-show, we talk about the different questions Sean Spicer might be asked and different issues that are going to come up in the briefing. But I want to say something first about this story that's been breaking over the last half hour or so, although you wouldn't know it by watching the mainstream media news networks. There has been an emergency declared at the Hanford nuclear site in Hanford, Washington. This is a site, it's a decommissioned nuclear production facility that used to produce plutonium for many of the nation's nuclear weapons. It's been decommissioned for a while. I can't remember the exact date. But apparently this morning there was a collapse in a tunnel there, and the tunnel was being used to store some sort of radioactive material. So I saw reports that said the staff of the facility had been evacuated and told to take cover and not to eat or drink anything. So some questions as to exactly, there's questions as to whether radiation might have been released in this collapse and what's exactly going on there. It could turn out to be, not that big of a deal ultimately, or it could turn out to be a really, really, really big deal. We're keeping our eye on it, but that's the latest. Let's see. I just have this in. This is from B&O News. B&O News says, no radiation detected after tunnel collapse at Hanford nuclear site. Workers taking shelter as a precaution. So at least right now from this one report, it says no radiation detected. I'm trying to see where they got this. Where did they get this? The blah, 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 blah. All right, well, B&O News says no radiation is detected, but then I look at the link that they're linking to, and it says it says it's not sure whether any radiation has been detected. So I'm going to keep an eye on that periodically and kind of keep checking my Twitter here and my different feeds and seeing if we can get more information about that. So we'll see. We will see. Anyways, so for now, let's talk a little bit about Sean Spicer. And I want to say this. This is from Susanna, back on the Hanford story. Susanna Frame. If you want to follow somebody who's covering the story and tweeting a lot about it, you can follow Susanna Frame at SFrameK5. She just tweeted, the Hanford Emergency Operations Center was activated at 8:26 a.m. Veteran workers think it's the first time it was opened for a possible radioactive release. So, so what will Sean Spicer be talking about today? Let's talk for a second about that, talk about the kind of questions he's going to be asked. Well, first, I'm sure there will be 10 million questions. I'm exaggerating, but there will be a lot of questions about the Sally Yates hearing and the James Clapper hearing yesterday. Personally, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this hearing because I feel like it was given such an excessive amount of coverage with relation to what actually was said at the hearing and the importance of the hearing. As I understand it, it's basically been 24 hours of coverage like on CNN and MSNBC about this hearing. And this is the hearing, I won't go over the whole thing, but where like Sally Yates said, hey, I went to the White House 18 days before they fired General Flynn, and I said, look, General Flynn might be able to be compromised by Russia, might be able to be blackmailed by Russia because he met with the Russian ambassador a certain number of times, and then he lied about it to you guys, and Russia knows that, so Russia could blackmail him. So she said that like 18 days before they actually fired General Flynn. And as I was watching this coverage yesterday and reading about it and stuff, I was asking myself, like, okay, so what's supposed to be the big takeaway here that's so important that this warrants like 24-hour nonstop coverage to the exclusion of other newest news stories? And I guess what the takeaway is ultimately, one way of looking at it is if you're like an anti-Trump person, you could say, well, this shows that President Trump should have fired General Flynn way before he did. And All right, so, and now let's say that that's the big takeaway you're supposed to get out of this, and that's why this is such a big story. Well, I think it's understandable, even if that's true, even if it's true that he should have fired him before, even if it's true that he had like good reason to fire him before he did. I don't know, because I don't know all the information here. But certainly you could see why the Trump administration might want to wait and not fire him. Oh, also another thing is like, well, they didn't fire him until the Washington Post publicly released this information that Flynn had been talking to the Russian ambassador and then lied to Mike Pence about it. So, but you could certainly see a couple of reasons why President Trump wouldn't want to fire General Flynn. One is that politically it would look really bad for him to fire General Flynn so early in his administration. It would look like, maybe President Trump thought, look, if I fire him now, it's going to make us look incompetent. I don't really think he's going to be blackmailed by Russia. We'll talk to him about it. We'll handle it in-house. No one will know. Now, you might disagree with that way of handling things if that's the way it was handled, but it's certainly understandable. I mean, White Houses, I think, all the time do things for political reasons and don't want to have themselves look bad. So, that could have been a line of thought. Another line of thought could have been, well, we want to investigate this further. We're not sure about the facts here. But let's just say what happened is President Trump found out and the White House found out 18 days before they fired General Flynn that he'd been talking to the Russian ambassador and he was talking to the Russian ambassador about policies that President Trump actually wanted to put in place. So President Trump, wanted better relations with Russia, which is what he said in the campaign. And late in President Obama's administration, he was issuing these sanctions on Russia. And supposedly General Flynn said to Russia something like, hey, don't worry about it. We might not keep those sanctions, or we're going to want a better relationship with you. So it's, regardless of whether he should have been really doing this technically because President Trump wasn't president yet, if that's what he was talking about, the idea was to get the Trump administration's foreign policy off onto a good start. So it wasn't like they were planning the overthrow of the American government like that. So, but let's just say that's what General Flynn was talking to him, and President Trump found this out and found out that these conversations went on and found out that General Flynn wasn't honest with the White House about it. If what President Trump ultimately did is say, let's not fire him yet, or let's not fire him until this goes public because I think he's a smart guy and we'll give him another chance. And also, we don't want this to look bad because this could really make our administration look bad. And maybe if it makes our administration look bad, it'll hurt us in terms of getting legislation we want passed. If that's the worst thing that President Trump did and that the White House did, fine, I could see people criticizing them for that. But I don't feel like that warrants this breathless 24-hour nonstop coverage to the exclusion of all other news stories yesterday, and this feeling like there was this incredible scandal that was being, uncovered yesterday in these hearings, and that they were so consequential. I mean, again, you could, if you'd like, criticize President Trump for not firing General Flynn sooner. You could. But given that he might have had reasons to do that, political reasons or other reasons, is it such a big scandal? That's my question here. To me, it doesn't feel like it is. And to me, it just feels like, once again, it feels like this thing where because a lot of people don't, because a lot of people in the media don't like Trump, and B, because people in the media know that anti-Trump stuff gets ratings, you have, to me, this excessive coverage of this thing out of proportion to what importance the hearing already had. And also, it's not like the hearing gave you all this new news. I mean, a lot of the stuff said in the hearing was stuff we knew anyway. So, I kind of got really sick of all the Yates coverage, and I didn't really want to watch it because I just thought it was really annoying to me. So I am sure there'll be a bunch of questions about this in the hearing, questions that I guess a bunch of you, I'm guessing, will find redundant because they'll ask the same things again and again, and I'll just find okay, let's just move on already, or just don't ask a million questions about it, but I'm guessing they'll ask more than I want them to ask. So anyways, in that I feel like our again, because my point here is not that this shouldn't be talked about, it's that the coverage of it is out of proportion to the actual event. All right, let me go back and just quickly look at my my news here and just make sure there's no up-to-date stuff about Hanford. Let's see. I'm looking to see if there's more stuff about the Hanford nuclear site. This is from Breaking News Live, Breaking N Live. Hanford official asserts incident is confined to small area and no reports of radiological release so far, no injuries reported. So that's another late update about that. We'll keep you posted. Now, whether or not, ultimately this might turn out to be not, there might be no radiation leaked or anything like that, and hopefully nobody gets hurt or anything. But I will say I do think it's pretty bad that, if you're watching the major news networks, you saw not a mention of this story once. So to me, this is one of these cases where it just shows like that new media covers, I mean, Twitter is, that's not even new media. It's just like non-network TV media, and I guess you could say social online media covers these stories a lot of times better and in a more informative way than mainstream media news networks do. You certainly hear about things sooner. Let's see here. Okay, so it is, I haven't even mentioned how to contact me. So it's 1:06 right now. In 24 minutes, the Sean Spicer briefing is supposed to start live, and we will bring that to you, and we'll have a post show afterwards. We'd love to get your comments, though. So we'd love to hear from you about what you think about any of the things Sean Spicer might be asked about today, about any of the big stories going on in the news. What did you think about the Sally Yates, James Clapper hearings? Did you have any thoughts on that? Send me your comments. You can either reach me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or direct message me at or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. I also wanted to mention quickly, hey, Jake, I don't know if Joe's out there right now, but I would love to get the name of those sisters who always write to us, because I wanted to give them a shout out, but I forgot to ask you. So if Joe's there, could you ask him? Also, I want to mention the hats. Jake, if you get a chance, could you bring in a hat, please? Jake is producing today. Oh, okay, so we don't have any. I'll mention the hats, but D and Dot, we don't know their last names. Well, I'll mention them. I'll try to get their last names for you. But D and Dot, they're two sisters. They watch us. D and Dot Wolf, they're two sisters. They watch us all the time, and they send us donations. They've sent us a number of donations, and they write very kind notes about how they enjoy the programming. And they say they enjoy our coverage of the Spicer pre-shows. And so we just wanted to say hi to D and Dot. Thank you for all your support. We really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and we're glad you're enjoying the programming. If you would like to support us, we rely on your donations to stay on the air. Without your donations, we cannot be on the air. So if you would like to support us, you can either go to rsbn.tv/donate, or you can click the $ at the bottom of the chat room. You can click the $ there and make a donation that way. That chat room is on YouTube next to the broadcast. Or if you're interested in getting some free stuff in return for your donation, you can make a monthly donation and get some free stuff in return, like, as I always say, this mug here. If you want to see what free stuff you can get in return for setting up a monthly donation, go to our Patreon site, www.patreon.com/RSBN, www.patreon.com/RSBN. By the way, chat room, for those in the chat room, I always mess this up, sorry. I'm going to reattach this. Everything's falling apart here. I sat on my earpiece and it fell out. Excuse me while I replace this. What a disaster. So people in the chat room, a couple days ago we had a monitor in here and I could see your actual chat in real time, which was fun. We don't have the monitor in here right now, but we are supposedly getting one in the next couple days. Actually, a very kind viewer said that they would donate a monitor. So we're going to get a monitor in here soon and be able to see your chat in real time. But just so you know, that's why we can't see it today in real time. I can't see it in real time because there's no monitor in here right now. But we'll be getting one soon. Okay, that's all better. I'll mention the hats in a little bit. I want to talk about that. Ket King writes in, Steve Flynn was blackmailed. Ket King, I would love to hear more. In what way do you think he was blackmailed? Let me know. I want to hear more. No to the Mark says, Trump needs to get the yellow fringe on courtroom flags removed. Look it up when you have a chance. I have known nothing about this story. Nothing. I'm going to look it up for a second. Yellow fringe on courtroom flags. Let's see if I can find something really. I see, get that gold fringe off my flag. What is this here? I'll have to read up on this. I'm not sure about this whole gold fringe on my flag controversy. So thanks for the heads up. I'll read up on that. Some other messages here from people who wrote in. Let's see. Deplorable Tiger fan sent me an article about the nuclear incident in Washington State. Thank you. That's on a Fox News site, so they did put one on their site. LB Dog, or is it IB Dog? IB Dog writes in, media crying that your transition is crap, nobody getting fired to stoke that. Yates simply had one of a million suggestions. So what you're saying, IB Dog, is that President Trump and the White House didn't want to fire General Flynn because that would just give the media an excuse. A media, a lot of whom were ready to pounce on President Trump anyway. It would give them an excuse to criticize the administration, and you're saying, IB Dog, you can understand why they wouldn't want to fire General Flynn in that situation, which I totally understand. Let's see here. Ryan writes in, what do you think the president should do about the Paris climate deal and more troops in Afghanistan? I think he should pull out of the Paris deal and send troops for training purposes. So those are two stories. Thank you, Ryan, for writing in that Sean Spicer could be asked about today. I think I'll definitely be asked about the Afghanistan one. So this story just came out last night and today that some of President Trump's military advisors, including supposedly his national security advisor, McMaster, are suggesting to him that he send several thousand more troops to Afghanistan. These troops would be sent to help train and advise Afghan forces who are fighting the Taliban, fighting Al-Qaeda and ISIS over there. There's President Trump is not sure what to do yet. He's still trying to figure out whether he's going to do this or not. And so that's, I was reading an article this morning. Actually, I will say this, in a New York Times article, it made an interesting point, which said that, you could see President Trump wanting to do this because he has said he wanted to fight Islamic radicals, and there's a bunch of that in Afghanistan. At the same time, President Trump had an America First policy and didn't want to be concentrating on America and didn't want to send troops overseas unnecessarily. So you could see some possible tension here as to whether you could see some reasons, intention for sending these troops over or not sending them over. There's also this question, I guess Afghanistan is now America's longest war, and a few years ago it looked like we were just going to pull out of there, and now maybe it looks like we're not pulling out, and there's this question of how long do we want to stay there? And there's all these costs and benefits. I mean, obviously, if you send troops there, you're putting them in harm's way. But if you don't keep troops there at all, does it prevent you from keeping an eye on what's going over there with Islamic militants? Does it help let the Taliban take over more of Afghanistan? Do you end up with more safe havens for terrorist groups there? So it's a very complex situation. But we've been there for a while, since the early 90s. So that is definitely something that will be asked about. As to what we should do about it, I mean, personally, I need to know a lot more about, I've done some reading on this, but it's very hard to figure out, what difference does X troops make as opposed to Y troops, and what are our ultimate goals in terms of, how much does having X number of troops over there help prevent terrorist groups from arising? There's all these different factors going on there, and so I can't really say. But my general thought, though, is that, and I don't think this is a radical thought, is that we shouldn't put troops in harm's way and also spend money on military endeavors unless it's really, really, really important and there's a decent chance of success. But I can't gauge that right now in terms of Afghanistan because I don't know enough about it. So, Ryan, thank you for that question. Also, you asked about the Paris climate deal. So, soon the president's supposed to say whether he wants to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. The Paris Climate Accord was this very big agreement that many countries, I want to say like most countries, I feel except for Syria and somebody else, it was like all countries or almost all countries, but the big industrial countries all participate in this climate agreement that commits countries signing it to reducing the amount of greenhouse gases being produced and to reducing the amount of global warming that's going to happen over the coming decades. And President Trump has said during the campaign he might pull out of it, that he thinks one reason would be that he thinks it ends up costing, it hurts our economy and hurts American businesses. Now, President Trump has not said yet whether he's going to pull out of this deal or not. Rick Perry, his Secretary of Energy, suggested he renegotiate but not pull out. But there is reportedly some dispute in his administration as to whether to pull out or not. I believe Steve Bannon reportedly wants him to pull out. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, actually, I read a story yesterday about how Ivanka Trump really doesn't want him to pull out. I take back the Jared Kushner. I didn't read that part, I don't think, but the Ivanka Trump really doesn't want him to pull out. And as I said, Secretary of Energy Perry recommend renegotiating and not pulling out. What do I think he should do? Well, I will say this. There could be something to renegotiating because in the sense of like, maybe you could get some of what you want. The problem with pulling out just seems to like you just abandon the whole thing. Whereas maybe if you want to have some options on this, renegotiation is a way to try to get something for the United States and get terms you feel better about, but at the same time not subverting the entire agreement. So that would be an option. Personally, I guess I feel like there's a lot going on here, but I do think it's an important issue. I mean, I know there's all these very involved, it's a fraught issue because people have these heated feelings about the science over climate change, but it is one of these things where the potential costs are a lot. So I think it should be, given that we've gotten countries to agree on this thing, here's what I'll say about it. If you're someone who thinks that America is not getting a great deal out of this climate change treaty, I think it's worth exploring the possibility of renegotiating rather than pulling out. Because maybe if you pull out now, you might in a few years think, oh, maybe we actually do want this treaty. Maybe we're seeing more evidence of global warming. And it's probably a lot tougher to have the treaty happen, because I don't think you're going to pull out and then have people say, okay, we'll forget the treaty, then sign it all again. So maybe it gives you more options down the road to renegotiate rather than pull out of the treaty. So that's what I'll say in terms of my thoughts as to if somebody thinks that there should be some sort of renegotiation. So this is my thoughts on renegotiating versus pulling out of the treaty.
Steve, I'd like to cut in and let you know that we are live on Facebook right now.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was wondering if you'd like to take a comment/question from somebody on the chat.
Yes, and Jake, I'm hearing you very lightly out of this earpiece.
Oh, sorry, there we go. Yep, great. Turned it up. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So hello to everybody on Facebook.
All right, so Beth Vanover said, what the hell is going on with California saying we want a communist government? Please talk about that. Yes, this is important. I think you were referring to your climate question, but please talk about California.
I gotta say, I have to confess, Jake, what was the person's name who asked the question?
Beth Vanover.
Okay, so I have to say, I know not. Thank you, Beth, for the question. I know nothing about this story, and I just did a quick Google search, and I see California's assembly votes to allow communists to hold state jobs. And it says California may end a decades-old ban on members of the Communist Party working in its government. Now, I have to read a lot more about this to know if this is the story you're talking about and what the deal is. Now, I will say this, though. I don't have a problem with unless people are actively working to subvert the United States. We do have free speech in this country, and I don't think that that state. It's probably unconstitutional, I would guessing. I'm not sure, but that the state government should refuse to hire people with certain beliefs. As long as they can do the job and it's not going to affect the workplace and it's not going to, in a very negative way, and they're not actively working to subvert the United States, I have no problem with and I think it should be the case that there's not discrimination of people based on beliefs. And so if this California law, which I just read about very quickly, was just this relic of the Cold War era, which said no communists in government jobs because they thought maybe communists were trying to overthrow the government at that point. If that's what this law is, and the reason that they got rid of the law is they just said, well, it's a relic of the Cold War, and it's right now. We don't feel that hiring a communist poses any threat to the system, as long as the person who's communist is willing to do a good job at work and stuff. Personally, I find that fine, but also I think it's probably a constitutional issue because of freedom of speech, and you can't. I don't know about this. This is like a constitutional question, but I don't believe public employers, I would think, can't discriminate in hiring based on people's beliefs. And that also probably might fall under equal protection clauses, those kind of stuff. So I would need to do some research on constitutionally exactly why this would be unconstitutional. It feels like it might be unconstitutional to me if the government refused to hire certain people just based on their beliefs. And maybe it's unconstitutional in a number of ways. But this might not be the story the questioner was asking about. Also, I've just read the headline of the story, so there might be facts here I am not aware of. I'll have to read more about it. That's just my quick take on the story as I interpreted it from a very, very quick reading. Okay, and just so people know, so we have 9 minutes till the press briefing is supposed to start, a Sean Spicer press briefing. And by the way, I want to say thank you for that question, by the way, and if you have a follow-up, write to me on Twitter or email me, and I'm happy to answer it on the air. So we have 9 minutes till the press briefing with Sean Spicer. We'll show that live, and then afterwards we'll do a post-show here. We will take your comments. We'll take your phone calls if you'd like to call in. If you'd like to write to me on the air, you can write to me and I'll read your comment on the air or take your question at Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER, or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. And what else did I want to say? I forget what I wanted to say. But yeah, hope you join us for the post show. I'm sorry? Jake? Yes. Yes, as I mentioned, we will be taking phone calls after. So I just want to see if there's any quick, before we go further, we've been talking about this Hanford nuclear emergency story. I just want to see if there's any quick updates about that. I'm scanning here. I'm not seeing anything right now. Sure, hold on one sec. All right, nothing new on the Hanford nuclear site. Yes, Jake, we have a comment from Facebook.
Yes, so Kit Kat, who is a loyal Facebook watcher, said global warming is another hoax for adding another tax to the world. The weather is actually very stable according to very highly respected physicists. Let's not succumb to anything France, Paris, that country is beholden to Germany and have, in my opinion, just lost their sovereignty with Macron.
Thank you, Kit Kat, for your comment. As I said before, the science over global warming is a very fraught issue. A number of scientists feel that there definitely is global warming, but there's also people who question the science, and there's strong views on both sides. So thank you, Kit Kat, for writing in. So Kit Kat, I'm guessing you think that President Trump should pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. I think we have some more comments here. I want to get to them. If I can find them. Nope, I might have been caught up. Hold on a second. Oh, and I want to check your email as well. So with Spicer, we talked about how he's going to be asked about the Yates hearings. He's going to be asked about Afghanistan. He might be asked about the Paris Climate Accord. And what else? Ooh, I just want to check this real quick, if I can open it. I had some notes about what else he might be asked about. Let me call those up here. So South Korea elected a new president yesterday. South Korea's previous president was impeached, thrown out of office, and actually she was arrested for misconduct while in office. And the new president, Moon Jae-in, President Moon of South Korea, he is in favor of this policy of engagement with North Korea, of economically helping them out. It's very different from the previous administration in South Korea, whose policy was very was like hard line against North Korea. Don't help them out economically at all. And that was an agreement. That policy was in agreement with the Trump administration policy. However, it seems like there might be some conflict now between the Trump administration policy on North Korea, which is isolating them, economic sanctions, and the South Korea policy of the new president, which apparently is, if he sticks to what he's promised, is going to be like setting up business activities with them and programs so they can get money. And maybe the thinking here, I'm guessing some of the thinking here might be from South Korea, from President Moon, might be, well, if you make their economy better, that's going to make average people in North Korea not want to live under that regime anymore, because they'll get some money and they'll see how good things can be, and that'll lead to like political change. So I'm guessing that might be part of the theory going on here. But we'll see, what happens between, if there'll be some tensions between South Korea and the U.S. with South Korea's new president in terms of their policy regarding North Korea. Also remember, the THAAD missile system was just put into place by America in South Korea to defend against North Korean missiles. President Moon, the new president of South Korea, has said remarks that suggested he didn't want that missile system there, so is something going to happen to that missile system? Will it be taken away? We'll see. That's something definitely Sean Spicer will be asked about today. I'd be surprised if he was not. Okay, we have about 4 minutes till the briefing starts. 4 minutes until it's supposed to start. We'll go right to it when it starts. Join us for the post show after. IB Dog says, he or she will tuning out after the 10th Flynn question. Hope Sean does too. So you anticipate a lot of questions on Flynn, and you're going to be tuning out if there are too many. Thanks, IB Dog. No to the Mark writes, Al Gore's $15 trillion scam. It's all about money and power. No to the climate accord. And you sent me a Washington Examiner article. Let's see. Let me get this up here. No to the Mark. That says, a fool's errand, Al Gore's $15 trillion carbon tax. That's from today. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for sending that in. So, no to the Mark. You are a no vote, sounds like, on the Paris Climate Accord. You think we should pull out? Okay, and we have 3 minutes. Well, he didn't start. Apparently, Sean Spicer's not starting early today like yesterday. Yesterday, he started very early, 15 minutes early. Another thing that Sean Spicer could be asked about today is, I've seen the last couple of days there have been stories in the media about that the Senate working group on the health care bill, so this is like the smaller group of senators that's working on coming up with the text of their version of the health care bill, has no women. It's 13 men and no women. Now, personally, I feel that it doesn't technically require a woman on this group to come up with a bill that treats the sexes equally. So I am perfectly confident that, in theory, a group of male senators could come up with a bill that's a balanced bill that doesn't favor men over women and adequately takes into account considerations about healthcare affecting women. However, that being said, politically, it seems like a kind of thing where it's just an obvious thing that some people will take offense at and complain about. And I understand that. I understand people who say, hey, there are female senators, couldn't you put one on the working group? Personally, I am confident that an all-male group could do this properly, in theory, but at the same time, I understand the complaint of people who say, like, stick a woman on there. And I also understand that politically, it's a big deal if you don't. So, Sean Spicer very well might be asked about that. What do you think about what does the administration think about the fact that the working group in the Senate on the health bill has no women on it? But I will say this, when I was thinking about the story, a thought I had, Mitch McConnell is not a stupid person. Now, you can like him or not like him, but he's certainly not stupid. I would think that Mitch McConnell was perfectly aware that having a working group of senators that didn't contain any women, this would come up and be a story and some people would complain about it. So what I was wondering is why is this the case? What was his reasoning here? Now, I will say I was reading an article in the New York Times this morning about this, and they at least brought up why this might have happened, but it brought it up really fast. And I think to me, good news coverage of this story would explore why McConnell might have done this rather than just complain about it or just say it's happening. And I was trying to think as to why he might have done it, and I didn't have any strong thoughts initially. I didn't think about it that much. I was thinking about it right before we came on here. But I don't know, there is this thing that, is he trying to please people on the right wing by doing it? I have to think about this. I have to think about it more, why he would do this. Or is it did he feel like there was a risk that that the women in the Senate who he would have put on it would be people who might complain about it and make trouble in a way that would make it harder to get passed? I'm guessing McConnell has a long view about wanting to get legislation that actually gets passed in the Senate. And for some reason, not having an all-male working group is part of that plan, and he thinks it helps get the legislation passed in some way. I'm not sure why this is, but I'm thinking about it. Maybe you've thought about it. Let me know. So I'm thinking that he realized he would get some political flack on this, but thought it was worth the benefit, whatever that benefit was, of having an all-male group. Again, I don't know. I can't say yet now what it is. Okay, it's now 1:31 p.m. The briefing was supposed to begin a minute ago, but it'll begin any time now. We will cover it to you. Before we will cover it to you, we will bring it to you and show it to you live. Afterwards, join us for the post show. We'll be taking your comments. We'll be taking your phone calls. So we hope you call in and talk about the briefing after, talk about the events, the issues that we're talking. We hope you call us and talk about the issues that they talked about in the briefing. And thank you to the moderators, by the way, today. The moderators for moderating the chat room on YouTube and also at rsbn.tv. Much appreciated. And I should also say, again, if you enjoy our pre-show coverage and you enjoy that we do a pre-show and a post-show every day, I don't think anyone else does this. If you like this coverage, if you like our alternative to the mainstream media for covering the briefings, covering breaking news, if you like the way we cover the President Trump rallies, where we show you the whole thing, all the speeches, where we interview people in line and talk to the regular people going to the rallies, if you like all that, we hope you consider donating, because your donations keep us on the air. Without your donations, we could not stay on the air. To donate, you can either go to rsbn.tv/donate, or you can go to the YouTube chat next to the broadcast and click on the $sign, or you can go to www.patreon.com/RSBN, and there you can set up a recurring monthly donation and get free stuff, goodies from Right Side Broadcasting in return for your donation. So hope you consider donating. Also, if you donate and we find out about it on the air during the broadcast, we will give you a shout out. I'm quickly checking here to see if there's an update about the Hanford nuclear story we were talking about earlier. Seems like perhaps things might be under control there. There was a tunnel collapse at the Hanford site where they store nuclear waste. There was thinking that maybe there was radioactivity released, radiation released, but no reports of radiation released yet. Let's see here. I'm just checking my email to make sure I'm all caught up here. Also, just
Lynn Michaels in the Facebook chat says, "You guys have done an awesome job."
And who was that again, Jake?
Lynn Michaels in the Facebook chat said, "You guys have done an awesome job."
Thank you so much, Lynn. We do it for you. We do it for the viewers. So when we hear that you're enjoying the coverage, that makes us happy because that's why we do it, for you guys. Thank you. Just a quick reminder also, President Trump's trip, his first trip out of the country as president, will be coming up in, well, today is, I think, the 9th. So it's about 2 weeks from now. I think he leaves on the 25th around there. He's going to Israel. He's going to Saudi Arabia. He's going to go to see the Pope at the Vatican. So that should be, it should be interesting. It should be like a whole new thing seeing President Trump in foreign countries meeting with their leaders. So we will try to bring you whatever we can bring you from that trip. We were actually talking to like a company in Israel who's going to be shooting some stuff there and talking to them about maybe using them to cover some stuff. We got to figure out though what the schedule is going to be and how much this costs and everything like that. But we'll do our best to bring you coverage of his upcoming trip. Maybe he'll tweet pictures from the trip, like tweet pictures of the different countries. Okay, this is an update about the Hanford nuclear story from Susanna Frame. She says, this is just 15 seconds ago, Hanford update from source, take cover status expanded to entire site. So I guess there were take covers orders for a limited part of the site. Now it's been expanded to the entire site. That would seem to go against the reports we were getting earlier that suggested maybe things were under control to a degree or no radiation released. So we will keep our eye on that story. I'll be watching it during the press briefing. Right now it is 1:35 p.m. And Sean Spicer should start any time now. We'll be covering it for you. Again, if you'd like to write in and give your comment before the briefing starts, you can either go to @Lookner on Twitter, write me there, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Also, during the briefing, if you have some comment you'd like to make, if you're watching the briefing and you think something and you say, oh, I want to put that comment on the air, or have Steve say something about that, write to me during the briefing. Some of you do that sometime, and I'm happy to talk about what you say after the briefing, same way as you do during the pre-show, @Lookner on Twitter, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv email. I also saw a story, this is another thing Sean Spicer could be asked about. I saw a story this morning where Lindsey Graham, I guess, was saying, I'm going to look this up, but that like he wanted President Trump's businesses to be investigated or something. Let me look this up. Graham, Trump, businesses. Can I get a... let's see here. This is from Reuters an hour ago. U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said he wants to examine Donald Trump's business dealings for any ties to Russia, CNN reported on Tuesday, one day after the issue was raised at a Senate hearing. So, look, I'm all for oversight. I'll just say that, to repeat what President Trump said yesterday, there's been no evidence shown of collusion between Russia and President Trump over the election. So I hope if there's further investigations, it's not just based on this vague idea that there was some grand scheme happening to turn the election toward President Trump. I mean, it's one thing if we have evidence of that, but I haven't seen any evidence of it yet. So, and President Trump also just did point out that he said these are taxpayer-funded investigations, but I also think that these investigations take up time and attention that could be going to other important issues, say entitlement reform or tax reform or something like that. So if they really do have good leads if Lindsey Graham has really good leads and good information suggesting that there might be some illegal activity going on with President Trump's businesses going on, fine, investigate it. But I hope there's like some, solid leads and evidence before anything like this is investigated. That's my 2 cents on that. Okay, it's 1:38, just waiting for the Sean Spicer press briefing to start. Let me check real quick. I'm sort of interested in that story now. I want to see one more thing. Yeah, there's nothing really in this story, the Reuters story, about like why Graham is saying he would look into business ties. no evidence there that I saw in the story. So I'd like to know if they actually have evidence that they would be basing this investigation off of. Okay, so we've talked about, now I did bring that up because I do think Sean Spicer actually might be asked about that. Once in a while, I say this on the pre-show, there are these stories that come out that if there's somebody in the press that's looking to ask an anti-Trump question, there are these stories they could ask about. So that's a story. If somebody's looking to ask an anti-Trump question, they could ask about the Lindsey Graham saying he might want the Senate to investigate President Trump's business's ties with Russia. Okay, what else? What else might he be asked about? Let me look. I thought there were some other things here. We talked about South Korea. We talked about the Yates hearings. We talked about General Flynn. We talked about Afghanistan. We talked about, let's see. Oh, there's this whole story where Jared Kushner's sister in China did this presentation where she was like trying to get investment for a Kushner family like business venture or property development venture in the US. And there was this, she mentioned that like, she didn't say Jared was involved with it, but she mentioned Jared's name during the ceremony. And then there's this question as to whether like, did they make it look like they were selling influence in some improper way? So I need to read more about that. I was reading about some of that yesterday. But that's another one of those stories that you could definitely see asked about today, especially I could see somebody putting a negative Trump spin on that, an anti-Trump spin on that. So just a heads up that could be asked about. Let me check real quick and make sure I'm caught up on your messages here. Hello again to everybody watching on Facebook. I heard we were broadcasting to Facebook today. Hope you're enjoying the program. Stick around after for the post show, after the briefing. We'll take your comments. We'll take your phone calls. So hope you join us then. Okay, I'm going to quickly also just check my Twitter to see if there are any more updates on the Hanford tunnel collapse. I gave you that one from a couple minutes ago, which was the take cover status was expanded to the entire site, but nothing besides that. Nope, can't find anything besides that. So, this just in. Look what I just found. One other story we just talked about is something Spicer might be asked about is that the Senate working group on the health bill had all men. So Elizabeth Landers reports, senior White House official tells me they are adding women to the 13-person all-male working group in Senate on health care bill. The official told me, you'll see those optics addressed. So according to a White House official, according to Elizabeth Landers, they are going to add a woman or women to the working group on the health care bill. And that is something that report could be asked about in the press briefing. Oh, I also see it. Apparently, Jack Posobiec, who's a conservative blogger and reporter and commentator, is in the press briefing room today. He just posted a picture of himself there. So nice that Jack got to be in there. Oh, and Jack actually is posting pictures from the press briefing room. So if you want to see that, you can go to @Jack Posobiec, and you can see the pictures he's posting today from the press briefing room. All right, it's 1:42. So yesterday, the briefing started 15 minutes early. Today, it looks like it's going to start probably around 15 minutes late. But this happens. You know what happens. So I was saying yesterday, it's this, normally there's I feel like there's one big story going on. This is pretty common with presidents where it's like there's one big thing they're working on that everybody's talking about. So we had the health bill before for the last couple weeks, but that's kind of gone away now, especially because, not that it's not happening, but it won't be like the top story, especially because I read a report today that said the Senate will be debating, it'll take them a couple of months to produce a new bill. A couple of months. So we're getting into July land already. So given that that's not going to be the big story next couple of months, what will it be? seems like we're in this place where we're like waiting to see what, or even in this week. So yesterday it was Yates, but that was because there was this hearing. And I even though the media loves talking about it, I can't imagine that story will keep being the top story for that long. So it feels like we're in this place where it's like the top story slot is open. What goes in there? Now, later this summer and in the fall, you're going to see budget stuff come up because there needs to be a new budget, and also I believe the debt ceiling might need to be raised. When the debt hits a certain amount, Congress has to raise the debt ceiling or the government shuts down. So those two things are going to be big, but that won't be more toward the fall. So what comes up? We don't know. We'll see. And also in the president, he's presumably not going to try to get a tax reform thing passed now because they're working on the health bill and trying to get that done first. So it feels like there's this kind of opening, kind of this, what's the word I'm trying to use? Like a vacuum. That's not really the right word. But where a new big story will come into play and be the top story. And to me, whenever this has happened during the Trump administration, whenever there's been like not a clear top story, quickly something has happened to fill that in. So I'm kind of just waiting to see what that is. I was also wondering, they covered that hearing nonstop yesterday, but in a certain, how much of this was because it might have been like a sort of a slow news day? Like if there was like big news stuff going on, would they have made nearly as big of a deal about the Yates hearing? And was making a big deal out of it a way for them to get viewers and to promote it as this really big thing? I mean, these things are businesses. They are businesses. So, if they can make this Yates hearing into a big event, it promotes viewership. Okay, it is now 1:45. Really, any minute now, Sean Spicer should start. If you'd like to write to me before the briefing starts with a quick last-minute comment, @Lookner on Twitter, or steve.lookner@rspn.tv. Or that's where you can email me. I'm checking that. Jake, what's going on in the press room there? Just everybody sitting around? Just people sitting around. Well, Jake is doing an excellent job, his usual excellent job producing today, and he will keep an eye on that for us. So there's that going on. What other stories might we see? I was trying to think of what could be the big news story. Oh, something else President Trump might be asked about is federal judges. I forgot to mention this. Hopefully I have time to talk about it. So President Trump, there's a number of federal judge appointments. The president appoints federal judges at the district court level, the circuit court level, Supreme Court level. There's a bunch of openings. I think it's over 100 at the district court level and appeals court level. And President Trump is just starting to appoint them. I think he just sent out a list, if I have this right, of around 10. He made 10 not appointments, he made 10 nominations. The nominations have to be confirmed by the Senate. And but I read this article in Politico that says there's this tradition in the Senate where a state's home senators have veto power over the nominees in the courts, for the federal courts in their state. So, for example, if President Trump nominated, I believe one of his nominees was from, one or more were from Minnesota, or were to be in a court in Minnesota, and that means Al Franken would get veto power over these judges traditionally, and the Republicans don't want to give up this veto power because they like having the veto power if there's a Democratic president appointing federal judges. But this could lead to a bit of a crisis in the sense, crisis may be a strong word, maybe a bit of a mini crisis, because what happens if the Democrats refuse to confirm, these Democratic senators refuse to accept President Trump's nominees for these federal judges? Will eventually the Senate have to consider, Senate Republicans have to consider going nuclear in the sense of giving up the home state senator veto rule about federal judges appointed for who would be working in their state? We'll see, but that certainly could be a source of tension, and that is something which we'll keep an eye on, and I'm guessing that Sean Spicer could be asked about today. And also, it's also interesting though, because I think over the last few presidencies, when I was reading about this, the numbers of unfilled federal judgeships have gone up. I think 2 presidents ago it was 50, and then under Obama it was 90, and under President Trump it's more than 100, something like that. And it's becoming harder. The Senate has started in recent years moving more slowly on an opposing party's president's federal judicial nominations. And I think that's problematic just because, like, these positions should be filled. You know, and figure out how to do it. I mean, I can see why both sides why sides don't want to concede to the other side. But like at a certain point, there are not that many federal judgeships. You know, on the appeals level, I think it's 100 and something. There are only 13 appeals courts, and I think there's like around 98 circuit courts, and there might be like, if you told me there were like 600 or 700 circuit court judges or something like that. I'm not sure, but it's around there. Let me figure that out. How many? District court judges. District court judges are there? Did I get it right? No, that's not right. That gave me the circuit court judges. District court judges. There are 94 district courts, and how many judges are there? Nope, I can't find out. You'd think there'd be an easy answer to this. You'd think when I asked Google that question, it would tell me. Oh, judicial vacancies. All right, let me try this. How many federal judges are there? Here we go. This seems like, is this true? That seems like too many. I think this gave me like the total amount ever appointed. All right, I need to do some research on this. But my point is, there's not like that these judgeships, it's important to get them filled because there aren't that many of them. And so, however I feel Congress and the president needs to work out this system of getting federal judges confirmed, I hope they do so, and that we don't keep seeing this trend of more and more vacancies, long-term vacancies in federal judgeships. I would also think if there's a lot of vacancies in the federal court system, that just like slows the court system down, which probably is not a good thing. So there's that. Okay, it's now 1:51. Fascinating. So yesterday the briefing was 15 minutes early. Today it's going to be like 20 minutes or so late, if not longer. But you never can tell. We were wondering if the early thing was a trend yesterday. Apparently not. Aaron writes in, all good patriots should fire women employees so they go back where they belong, make America strong again, hire only men so women can go where they belong, more jobs for America, just fire all the people who don't belong in the workforce in the first place. Now, I'm a little confused, Aaron, why you think women don't belong in the workforce. Because I think many of us, I know many women who do a very good job at their jobs. So I'd like to hear maybe a little more about your reasoning, because just the fact that they're women, at least to me, doesn't suggest that they can't do a good job. But Aaron, feel free to write back and expand on your comment. Regina writes in, Regina Payton writes in, I am good with having no women on the Senate group for the health care bill because they are complaining about Planned Parenthood. So you think, Regina, that the women from the senators who might be on this working group might complain about Planned Parenthood, and maybe in the House bill that was passed, it defunds Planned Parenthood for a year. It says no federal funding for Planned Parenthood for a year. But you're saying that perhaps the women, I think you're saying something like if there are women who are the women senators who might be on this working group might try to, I think you're maybe concerned that they might try to fund Planned Parenthood, and it sounds like you don't want that to be the case. So Regina, appreciate your input. Thank you. Richard P. sent me a link about the gold fringe story. Yes, and it was actually, I had just seen the story when I did a quick Google search on it. Thank you, Richard P. I'll look at the story that says, get the gold fringe off my flag. I was not aware of this issue, that it was an issue, so I will do a little research on it. Why isn't it easier for me to find how many district court judges are there? That seems like a simple question. All right, let me see here. So there are 94 federal judicial districts, and there are I think there's like 13 circuit courts. But does it say how many judges there are? Let's see. Oh my gosh. Why isn't there like an automatic Google answer? Like, I feel like Google should just give me the answer to that when I type that in. Well, I give up for now. I'll go look during the break. That's angering to me.
Steve,
yes.
Rocky Mike donated $5, and he said, watching RSBN at Blood Donating Center, helping cancer kids in my community. I love RSBN. MAGA.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for the donation, Rocky Mike. That's really kind of you, and it's also really kind of you to go to the blood donation facility. I think he said at the cancer center. Jake. So I believe he's donating blood there. He said the blood donation facility. So that's very nice of you too. Try to help other people out. So Rocky Mike, thank you, and kudos to you for helping other people out. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Rocky Mike. Okay, it is now 1:54. Jake, we could be closing on the record for late start time. I'm not sure what that is. Actually, wasn't there one day, Jake, where it started like 45 minutes late? Yeah, I don't know what happened that one day, so we're not going to hit the record, I don't think. But we are happy to be on with you as long as it takes for the pre-show until Sean Spicer briefing comes on. Then join me after for the post-show. And we'll take your comments, we'll take your phone calls, and apologize if you've been waiting for the briefing, but we don't control when it starts. All we're told is the start time, so sometimes it's late. We'll do the pre-show until it starts. Jake has his eye on the press room. When they start, we will go right to it. In the meantime, give me a shout. Maybe try to find out for me, because I don't seem to be able to find it out, exactly how many federal judges there are, how many district court judges and circuit court judges there are. I just tried to do some searching here, and I couldn't find an easy answer to that. So I could find the number of courts, but not the number of judges, for some crazy reason. But feel free to write in. We're taking your comments up until when the briefing starts, and during the briefing, and after the briefing, at Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Another thing I thought about that Sean Spicer might be asked about is there's this whole story out a couple days ago where Putin called Trump and said he wants to work toward having these safe zones in Syria. And Russia reached this agreement with, it was Turkey, and I believe was it with Syria as well, about having these safe zones. And there's this question about why Russia is doing this all of a sudden. I read an article in the Washington Post speculating on some different reasons that Putin might be doing this. But anyways, that's something, I don't remember if that was asked about yesterday. I can't recall it being asked about yesterday. If it wasn't asked about yesterday, it could be asked about today. I wonder also if there'll be any special guests today. You know, once in a while, Sean Spicer brings in a special guest where it's like Steve Mnuchin, or it could be Mick Mulvaney. So maybe there'll be some special guests come in. We'll see. As I said yesterday, here we go. Deplorable Tiger fan. Where did you find this? Wikipedia. You did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It looks like, where in the Wikipedia article did you find this? Here we go. As of 2010, there were 678 authorized district court judgeships. So thank you so much. You confirmed I said 500 or 600. So thank you for that. I wonder, does it say the appeals court judgeships here too? Let's see. Appeals. Which article is this? Is this article about the appeals court or about federal courts? District courts. I'd have to look at the federal courts one, but I think the federal one is about like 100 or so. So as you can see, if there are 678 or whatever district court judges and 100 or so appeals court judges, that means about 800 total federal judges aside from the Supreme Court. So if over 100 of those are unfilled, that's like more than an eighth of all the federal court judges. That's a problem for this system. They can do, like, I would presume they can only do like 7/8 of the work they could normally do. So again, this is to me not a partisan issue. It's just hopefully we can get this figured out so that we don't have this trend of more and more federal judge positions going unfilled for a long time. I think that would be a good thing. Time check. It's 1:58. We're covering the briefing as soon as it starts. We will bring it to you. Thank you very much. Who sent that? That was Deplorable Tiger Fan who sent that. Really appreciate it. And Andrew Hallman writes in 678 judgeships via Wikipedia. Thank you, Andrew Hallman. Very much appreciated. Call 313 said, look at Facebook feed answers someone posted on your Facebook feed. So maybe call 1313. I apologize if somebody posted the answer to that on the Facebook feed. I can't see the Facebook feed in here. Jake is keeping an eye on it out there, but he's also producing the show, so he doesn't.
I instructed them to email that to you, Steve.
Yes, thank you. So normally, if you're going to reach me, for people on Facebook, the best way to reach me in here in the studio when I'm broadcasting is to email me or to do it on Twitter, because I don't see the Facebook chat live. But thank you. You guys are always so good when I have a question. You help me out. Much appreciated. Aaron writes back. Aaron had said that Aaron had written in writing that Aaron thought that men should have jobs and women shouldn't be hired in the workplace. And I said, well, why do you think that, Aaron? And Aaron wrote back. Aaron says, because women are a liability. They get pregnant. They have. All right, this is Aaron. I'm going to read your view. You say they get pregnant, they have monthly, that makes them irrational, they are weaker. The only reason they have jobs is because libtards got them to believe they could be equal. Women shouldn't be working, you say. You also say that God intended women to be wives and mothers, not working. So that's your basic view. So I respect, Aaron. You have a right to have your view. I respect that, and I will mention your view because you wrote in with it. I will say personally, though, in my experience, I have worked at a number of workplaces with many women who did an excellent job. So my personal experience has not suggested to me that women couldn't, do jobs as well or better than men in certain circumstances. Now, I will say you point out the thing about how women do get pregnant and men don't. I agree with you. And, maybe for certain jobs that would be an issue if a woman has to take time off and there's a job where you absolutely can't take time off. But also maybe there can be, in other jobs they have provisions for women missing time to have kids. So, that's, again, I'll just say from my personal experience, I see no reason why women can't do a great job at many jobs, and I've had experience with women doing those jobs. But I also, here at Right Side, we don't tell you what to think. We're open here to all kinds of views, either on the left or on the right, or some combination or neither of those. So we will read your views if you write them in, and our job here is not to tell you what to think. Our job here is to give you information, to present you with lots of views, and then you, the viewers, can decide for yourselves. So I'm happy to have that discussion about any topic. So feel free to write in about topics, as long as it's clean and as long as it's not like personal attacks on people, and you know what I'm saying. There's a limit to which, and certain things we won't say on the air, but we're happy to air all kinds of views here. So thank you, Aaron, for writing in. Let's see here. Deplorable Penguin writes in, thank you for your broadcast and being so friendly and open. Salutes from the South Pole. Now, Deplorable Penguin, I would love it if you were really from the South Pole. Also, I'd love it if you were a penguin. I know you're not a penguin. But I have to think, Deplorable Penguin, you're not really writing from the South Pole. But you do have a cute Deplorable Penguin at Penguin4K. You have a cute Twitter page where it's a picture of a penguin and it says, "Hi, I'm a penguin," and your location is South Pole. So, Deplorable Penguin, I will play along. Hello to you. Hope things are good at the South Pole. Let's see. Cole 1313 says, no one is watching the chat on your broadcast. All info on your Facebook feed. So Cole 1313, here's the deal. Maybe you don't know this. we are a very small organization. So right now, this broadcast is being put on by me, who's on the air, and Jacob Seals, the producer. We don't have a lot of money here. We wish we could hire lots of people to watch all the chats. So Jake out there is busy just making sure the feed is working right and keeping us on the air. When he has a moment, he checks. We have a YouTube chat and we have a Facebook chat. So he checks those, but his A1 job is listening to me and dealing with keeping the picture on the air and making sure all the technical stuff is going right, making sure the sound is going right. So what will happen is sometimes Jake might miss stuff that comes up on in the chat rooms because he can't keep an eye on both chats all the time. And I personally, I have to be on the air here, and I can't check the chats repeatedly while staying on the air. So ideally what would happen is we would have enough money to hire someone to be like a producer who could just focus on the chats while we were on the air and because like you said, people were posting that, and it'd be really cool if we could get that information in real time to me. But that is why, so you're right in saying with a normal TV network, you'd be like, hey, you guys aren't watching the chat if you have a chat. Although actually, I will say they probably don't watch their chats either. But then maybe that's because they don't care and they're not interactive. But we do care, but that's why we explicitly say on the show, if you want to reach me, and be sure to reach me during the broadcast, best way to do it is to email me directly or message me directly on Twitter. So apologies that we don't have somebody watching the chat and YouTube and the chat on Facebook full time. It really is just because we're such a small operation and we don't have the manpower to be able to do that. IB Dog says, look deeper, number of judges looks like 2,000. Now, I have a question about this. You sent me something. Oh, I'll investigate this further here. But anyways, we're going to go to the briefing now. Thank you for all your input and all your comments on the pre-show. Join us for the post-show after the briefing, where we'll take your comments and take your phone calls. Look forward to seeing you then. But for now, enjoy the Sean Spicer press briefing.
They might have just saying peace.
Why did he go like this?
Peace, brother.
2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes.
It could be 30 seconds, it could be 10 minutes.
My camera guy goes.
Based on what? Based on what? Inside information, dude.
I just say what they tell me. That was FPPO. At least he didn't do this. Well, that may have been what he was doing.
Did you do it like this?
He did Sammy Sosa, and that was weird. That's the baseball game. On the front row, he was doing something like this. I was like, that's cool. 30 minutes later. That's fine.
We're listening to that thing with the Air Force football team.
Yeah. What's the over?
Giovanna gave me
25 minutes?
Didn't have it for 20 minutes.
Champion runner? 40? What's going on? I can't do it. Over under out. 44. You understand the idea of over under? It's a number. It's a number. And then you guys.
Where would I find that?
So, based on your drawing, it's not better.
Very good. Semi-accurate.
Peter's on the phone. Hold on. Sorry, I'm late. Wrapping up some business. Good afternoon. The president this morning met with General McMaster. As you know, General McMaster is helping lead the team that's organizing the president's upcoming foreign trip. And this week, the president has been focused on meeting with the team, getting ready for the various stops that he'll be making and meetings that he's going to be having. During his many conversations with world leaders, the president has seen a great desire for America to re-engage and be a leader once again in helping solve the world's complex problems. And he's already made moves both behind the scenes with leaders and his public statements to show them that America is reasserting its leadership on the world stage. These visits are another important part of this American resurgence. While on the trip, the president will further our strategic objectives in the region, creating new opportunities that will strengthen the United States and our allies while weakening our enemies. I know many of you are interested in the logistical aspects of this trip, and we'll be trying to have further briefings throughout the week on those aspects of the trip as soon as we can, so stay tuned. Also on the subject of foreign visits, I'd like to announce that the President has invited the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates to visit the White House on May 15th, and the Crown Prince has accepted. We look forward to welcoming the Crown Prince and see the visit as an opportunity to deepen cooperation with a key partner in the Middle East. Moving on to domestic matters, the Vice President spent his morning today on Capitol Hill. He met privately with Majority Leader McConnell and also had individual meetings with other senators. The discussions focused primarily on the path forward for the American Health Care Act in the Senate and how the administration can work with Congress to craft a tax reform bill that follows the President's priorities: simplification, providing tax relief to the American families and individuals, and stimulating the economy. The Vice President also attended the weekly Senate Republican Policy Lunch. Later this afternoon, the Vice President will be joined by Second Lady Karen Pence, General McMaster, and Ivanka Trump to welcome more than 150 military families of all branches of service for a reception at the White House. The event recognizes National Military Appreciation Month and National Military Spouse Appreciation Day, which takes place this Friday. The President's cabinet is busy inside and out of the Beltway, speaking on the administration's agenda with local officials and key stakeholders. Secretary of Health and Human Services Dr. Tom Price is in Michigan and West Virginia today, where he will hear from those on the front lines of the fight against the opioid epidemic. Also today, the Justice Department announced that Attorney General will be speaking on opioids on Thursday at a Drug Enforcement Administration 360 Heroin and Opioid Response Summit in Charleston, South Carolina. The DEA's 360 strategy is designed to help cities and surrounding regions deal with the heroin and prescription drug abuse epidemic and the violent crime associated with it. This day-long event, sponsored by the DEA, Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, and the University of Charleston School of Pharmacy, will bring together stakeholders and professionals working in law enforcement, prevention, education, treatment, recovery, healthcare, and emergency response. In Washington, Secretary of Commerce Ross is speaking this afternoon at the 47th Conference of the Americas, which is taking place at the State Department. The event brings together administration officials, distinguished leaders from across the region to focus on major policy issues affecting the hemisphere. Also at the State Department this morning, Secretary Tillerson participated in a signing ceremony for the United States-Georgia General Security of Information Agreement with the Prime Minister of Georgia, a major milestone in security cooperation between our two countries. The President was also pleased to see several top administration officials recently move through the Senate. Last night, Heather Wilson was confirmed to be Secretary of the Air Force, and Governor Branstad was approved by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to be ambassador to China and is moving on for a vote on the floor of the Senate. The President also looks forward to seeing Dr. Scott Gottlieb confirmed by the full Senate to serve as Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration later today. Finally, with regard to the Paris Climate Agreement, the President has been meeting with his team for quite a while on this matter, and he will not be making an announcement regarding that agreement until after he returns from the G7. With that, I'd be glad to take your questions. Caitlin.
Thank you, Sean. We got two questions for you today. The first one is, why did the President wait 18 days to fire Mike Flynn after the White House was informed of his conduct and warned that he was a potential target for Russian blackmail? Because you realize the timing of this makes a lot of people think that he wouldn't have been fired if the story had not come out in the media.
Well, I think, first of all, let's look at the timeline. Sally Yates came here on the 26th of January. Then she informed the counsel's office that there were materials that were relevant to the situation. It wasn't until about 7 days later that they had access to those documents. After that time, they did what you should do, frankly, is an element of due process, reviewing the situation. They informed the President right away after they were informed of her giving us a heads up. And ultimately, the President made the right decision. But I guess the question, or the point that I would put back on you is, somebody came over, gave us a heads up on a situation, told us there were materials. We were provided those materials 7 days later, reviewed those materials, underwent a process of reviewing the situation, and ultimately the President made a decision and it was the right one. So I think that the process worked, frankly, when you think of the time in which we had the information to make the decision that the President made.
Well, you're saying the president stands by that decision and he made the right decision, but why does he continue to defend Mike Flynn?
Well, I don't think it's not a question of defending Mike Flynn or not. Hold on.
He was a witch hunt and he should seek immunity.
I think Mike Flynn is somebody who honorably served our country in uniform for over 30 years. And I think, as he's noted, Lieutenant General Flynn was asked for his resignation because he misled the vice president. But beyond that, I think he did have an honorable career. He served with distinction in uniform for over 30 years, and the president does not want to smear a good man.
What was his role at the White House in those 18 days? Was he still fulfilling his normal national security advisor duties?
Yeah, I'm not going to get back into it. I will say, as I mentioned, the time.
Do you think it's worrisome that he was still doing that when he was a potential target of Russian blackmail?
Can I one thing that I think is important to know is let's look at, again, how this came down. Someone who is not exactly a supporter of the president's agenda, who a couple days after this first conversation took place refused to uphold a lawful order of the president's, who's not exactly someone that was excited about President Trump taking office or his agenda. She had been, hold on, Caitlin, hold on, no, Caitlin, let me answer the question. She had come here, given a heads up, told us there were materials, and at the same time, we did what we should do. Just because someone comes in and gives you a heads up about something and says, I want to share some information, it doesn't mean that you immediately jump the gun and go take an action. I think if you flip this scenario and say, what if we had just dismissed somebody because a political opponent of the president had made an utterance, you would argue that it was pretty irrational to act in that manner. We did what we were supposed to do. The president made ultimately the right decision, and I think he was proven that
How is she a political opponent of the president?
she was.
She's the acting attorney general that he
appointed by the Obama administration and a strong supporter of Clinton. So that's now, I think, number 4. So, Jim.
Thank you, Sean. Are the canceled meetings a sign the president is vacillating on the Paris Accord and undecided whether to remain in the agreement or withdraw from it?
I think it's simply a sign that the president wants to continue to meet with his team, develop meet with not just the economic piece, but his environmental team, and come to a decision on what's the best interest of the United States using the expertise that surrounds him.
Well,
Okay, Mara.
John, does the president want to win the war in Afghanistan?
Yes.
What would winning mean to him?
I think reducing the threat, especially when it comes to ISIS and the Taliban.
Reducing the threat.
Well, I mean, minimizing, eliminating, but obviously, in the best case scenario, we want Major. I'm going to answer Mara's question. I think the answer is that we want to eliminate the threats that are against our national security and pose a threat to our citizens, our allies. So we need to fully eliminate any threat around the globe, frankly, not just in Afghanistan, that poses a threat to our people and our allies.
I just have a question as he considers what to do next and if he wants to commit more troops. At one point, we had 100,000 troops there and we didn't eliminate the threat. Why would 15,000 do the trick if 100,000 did before?
Well, I think that's a very Washington question, meaning just because you spend more, throw more people, doesn't mean you're doing it in the most effective way. I think one of the things that he has asked his national security team to do is to actually rethink the strategy. What are we doing to achieve the goals that you were asking about? How do we actually, how do we win? How do we eliminate the threat? And I think doing that isn't just a question of throwing money or people, but looking at the mission and the strategy, and that's what the team has been doing holistically, not just in Afghanistan, but the total beyond Afghanistan. It's also the way that he's asking them to look at the threat that ISIS poses.
Will he explain this to the American people, or will be this something coming out?
We'll see. I mean, I don't want to get in front of. I don't know how he's going to do that, but we'll wait and see and go from there. John.
Thanks a lot, Sean. A question about the president's policy concerning Syria. This morning we learned from the Pentagon that the president has approved a plan to directly arm Syrian Kurds against ISIS. Has the president discussed this plan with the leader of Turkey, and what was the reaction from Turkey?
I don't know if he's addressed this to the president yet. I do know that yesterday the president authorized the Department of Defense to equip Kurdish elements of the Syrian Democratic Forces as necessary to ensure a clear victory over ISIS in Raqqa, Syria. The SDF partnered with enabling support from U.S. and coalition forces are the only force on the ground that successfully seize Raqqa in the near future. We're keenly aware of the security concerns of our coalition partners in Turkey. We want to reassure the people and the government of Turkey that the U.S. is committed to preventing additional security risks and protecting our NATO ally. The U.S. continues to prioritize support for Arab elements of the SDF. Raqqa and all liberated territory should return to the governance of local Syrian Arabs. The fight for Raqqa will be long and difficult, but ultimately yet another defeat for ISIS and another step towards eliminating the ISIS threat that threatens peace and security in the region and the world.
The Secretary of State is meeting today with his counterpart from Russia today, the Foreign Minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov. Are you expecting any deliverables from that particular meeting?
I think we'll have a readout when that's done. Olivia.
Thanks, Sean. I got two for you. First, do you expect the Afghan review and the ISIS review to be done by the time the president heads to Saudi Arabia?
I don't want to. That's a question that I'm going to leave up to the national security team. I'm not going to. The president's not putting a deadline on that. We're making sure that this is obviously what we announced today is part of that. It is not entirely it, and we will have more as we go forward. I just don't want to pin down a timeline on that.
One more. In this briefing, you've talked about the president's desire to, quote, fully eliminate any threat around the globe to U.S. interests. You've talked about the United States wanting to re-engage and be a leader once again and reasserting its leadership on the world stage. Some of the president's supporters are going to hear in those comments maybe a bad omen about the president changing his mind and becoming more interventionist. Not saying he wasn't going to be interventionist because he talked about ISIS a fair amount, but what would you tell them about, is he going to embark now on nation building? Is he going to deepen American involvement in conflicts in Syria and Afghanistan and elsewhere?
No, I appreciate that. I think that his priorities remain the same, but he's going to do what he can to make sure that he protects the country and our people and threats that directly affect the United States. Brian?
Thank you. Just following up, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will, but the day after it was announced that he was under investigation, Flynn, he met with, if I'm correct, with Pence and the Russians on a phone call. So while he's under investigation, why is he being allowed to participate as a national?
I really don't recall the schedule from that day, Brian's up. But the point is, again, I think this is, look, I answered the question a moment ago, but I think as I went through the timeline, Sally Yates came over here, gave us a heads up, provided us the opportunity, made it very clear that materials were available for the council to review. But and we followed that process. And within 11 days after that, we accepted General Flynn's resignation that the president had asked for.
But the point being, while he's under investigation,
I understand it, but
what is
look, we're not going to relitigate the past on this. I think we've been very clear as to what happened and why it happened. I think the president made the right decision, and we've moved on. Like.
Sean, can you confirm that the meeting today between Ivanka Trump and Mr. Pruitt was canceled, and if so, why?
I don't know. I'd be glad to get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
And secondly, as it relates to the G7, you said the decision on the Paris Climate Agreement will be made after the G7. So does the president feel that he can extract any concessions while he's there? Does he feel like he can renegotiate it? Or does he just want more time? Why until after the G7?
I think the president wants to make sure that he has an opportunity to continue to meet with his team to create the best strategy for this country going forward. Sarah Murray, welcome back. Mrs. Sarah Murray. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I just want to get back to Olivier's point. I mean, why shouldn't President Trump's supporters, if he does decide to add more troops in Afghanistan, see that as running counter to what he campaigned on for so long? The notion of America first, the notion of, the fact that we're too involved in foreign entanglements abroad. He campaigned on that, and the way he's governed, I think, from what we've seen in Syria and from what he's considering in Afghanistan, seems to send a very different message.
I just want to be clear. The one thing that there is a difference between Afghanistan proper and our effort to defeat ISIS. And that's one thing that he was also very clear on in the campaign, that, and as president, that he is going to do everything he can to fight radical Islamic terrorism, to root out and destroy ISIS. In some cases, if ISIS, where he has to go into Afghanistan, they may be synonymous at that point, but they are not always the same, right? You can be the goal is always going to be defeat ISIS, which is something that he's been very clear on with the American people from the get-go. But that all being said, let's be clear, with the exception of the piece that we announced today, that the president authorized yesterday, no decision has been made. So let's not get ahead of what that ultimate policy will be.
One other question. Can you just give us a better sense of what the president has been doing with his time the last few days? We haven't had very detailed schedules. We haven't been seeing him publicly. He's only had, one or two meetings. So what is he actually doing all day long?
Thanks. I mean, as I said at the top, the president's going on a 8-day trip. He's going, to Saudi Arabia, Israel, Rome, the G7, NATO. This is an opportunity. Next week, as I mentioned, he's going to have the Crown Prince here. He's got a commencement speech at the Coast Guard Academy. Part of the use of this week is to be meeting with the principals and the head of the directorates of the countries that we're going to ahead of the meetings, where he's receiving extensive briefings throughout the week with his team. He's had several meetings with General McMaster over the last couple of weeks, who's one of the leaders in the effort for this trip. He's met with the chief of staff, his legislative team. He was just meeting when I walked out of the Oval Office with his part of his economic team. So this is an opportunity for him to get ahead of this first really long foreign trip, to make sure that he is on a whole host of issues, whether it's ISIS, whether it's our economic issues or trade issues, to make sure that we go in there, strengthen our relationships, but also make sure that we put America's priorities first. Yeah.
President Trump tweeted yesterday that the story of possible collusion between his campaign and Russia is a hoax, and he questioned when this taxpayer-funded charade would end. Is the administration trying to set parameters on what Congress and the FBI should investigate?
No.
And so, and if that is the case, so what did the president mean by when will this charade end?
Well, I think even Director Clapper said yesterday, when asked if there was any evidence that he had seen of collusion, he said no. And I think that at some point, I said it before in this briefing room, but we have to take no for an answer. He said that the director of National Intelligence asked, has there been anything that you've seen additionally that shows collusion? He answered very clearly. The answer is no. And it continues to be no. And I think that there's a point at which all of the things that the president is doing economically and in national security wise to move the country forward we need to take no for an answer and move on to the issues.
But is it the role of Congress and the FBI to say when a matter should be concluded and not the White House? And then also following up on that, Senator Lindsey Graham has said that he wants to look into President Trump's business dealings to see if there are any connections to Russia. Would the White House cooperate with that?
Yeah, so the president obviously was aware of Senator Graham's suggestion after he made it today, and he's fine with that. He has no business in Russia. He has no connections to Russia, so he welcomes that. In fact, he is already charged a leading law firm in Washington, D.C. to send a certified letter to Senator Graham to that point, that he has no connections to Russia. So that should be a really easy look. Matt.
Thanks, Sean. Two questions on two different topics. First, you said that Sally Yates was a strong supporter of Hillary Clinton. What is that based on?
I think she's made some, I think she was widely rumored to play a large role in the Justice Department if Hillary Clinton had won.
So on a different topic, I have a question about that fired usher, Angela Reed.
Mm-hmm.
It was reported that she received a generous severance package. I'm wondering, how do you give a substantial severance package to a government employee?
I don't know. I'd be glad to get back to you on that. Anita.
Yesterday we learned that Sally Yates had said that she learned of the first immigration order, the travel ban, by reading the newspaper. And I'm wondering why the acting attorney general wasn't privy to that. Was that because she was a Obama appointee, Clinton supporter? Why was the acting attorney general not notified? She had just met that same day that it was signed with Don McCain. So he could have mentioned as well.
I don't know why she wasn't. Again, I think if we want to relitigate the first executive order at the time, we talked about all of the proper individuals that needed to be made aware of, were made aware of at the time.
Is it not unusual that the
I don't.
general?
I think I also, just to be clear, again, remember, this is someone who ultimately didn't even want to enforce it. So to prove, to suggest that somehow.
She wanted to enforce it until she knew.
I understand that, but I think ultimately we were proven right about who needed to be in the loop on that, because she ultimately chose to disregard the president's lawful order.
It was on purpose, though. Is what
No,
you're
I
saying.
didn't say that. Please don't. I did not say that. What I'm saying is that we discussed at the time of the executive order being signed back in January the process by which that was followed. the appropriate people then were in the loop on that. Sarah?
Yesterday in her testimony, Sally Yates said that she arranged for White House counsel to view the evidence against General Flynn at the DOJ, but she wasn't around to see if that happened. You said that took place 7 days after her initial meeting. Was the evidence against Flynn relayed to the president at that time, or did the president learn about the allegations against Flynn through the media 18 days later?
Following the meeting, the White House counsel immediately informed the president and senior White House personnel when she first came here. Late on Friday, the 27th, Yates and the White House counsel met again to discuss certain issues that she had left unclear at the time. And then the president, as you know, fired her on the 30th of January after she refused to enforce the president's legal executive order, contrary to the advice of career DOJ officials at the time, who had told her that this was legal. She overrode them, didn't do this. The White House didn't get access to that underlying evidence described by Ms. Yates until Thursday, February 2nd, which is a week after Ms. Yates first met with the White House counsel. And then that's when I think the full sort of review began, once they had access to that information.
Was the president informed at that time?
I know he was informed at the front end of what she had told him, and the council had informed them that they were going to then seek the information that she said was available to them. Hallie?
Two different topics for you. I want to follow up on what a couple of folks have already mentioned here. You've described in this briefing what Sally Yates did as a heads up with Don McGahn. She has testified she came to the White House twice in person to meet with Don McGahn on the 26th and the 27th to do more, she says, than simply offer to provide materials. She says she encouraged the White House to act and expressed real concern about Mike Flynn being compromised by the Russians. On the 28th, Saturday, Mike Flynn sat in on that Oval Office phone call with President Putin. Was that the right call?
Again, I think what you have is somebody who was an Obama appointee coming in and saying, I get it, but at that moment, sure, you have someone who you have to wonder why they're telling you something, to the point where they had to come back a second time because what they were saying was unclear.
So let me follow up on that, because and before I get to the second topic, you said it was widely rumored that she wanted to be a part of the Clinton White House potentially. And so that makes you negate her coming to
I'm not. I guess my point is that somebody who clearly showed by the fact that career DOJ attorneys told her that the president's lawful order, that she should sign the president's lawful order, and then chose not to do it, was clear. I get it, but that vindicates the president's point that this was not somebody who was looking out. I think my point is that we were correct in the assumptions that we made at the time. Trey.
My second topic for you, though, is just on healthcare.
Yeah.
Is the White House asking Senate leadership to put more women on the working group?
I'm not aware of that. Trey.
White House like to see that?
I think the more voices that we can put on a panel to help get this done, the better. So to the extent I'm not going to tell Leader McConnell, or the White House is not going to tell him how to conduct a panel, but at the same time, I think that any voices that can be constructive in getting a more patient-centric healthcare system put together, would be welcome. But that's not our call to make. Trey.
There's been a number of conversations in Washington this week about the relationship between H.R. McMaster and the president. How does President Trump characterize his relationship with his national security advisor?
Excellent.
Another follow-up question very quickly on Flynn. You've spoken from the podium before about the president asking Michael Flynn to resign as a result of him misleading the vice president. We've learned a lot about Michael Flynn this week and potential investigations, and we know actual investigations into his actions before coming here to the White House. Was this at all considered in the president's decision to ask him to resign?
I think you can only accept someone's resignation once. So he asked for it, he got it, and so to go back and relitigate isn't really something that makes a ton of sense. He got it, he asked for it, he got it the first time. I don't think you go back and continue to say, would I have asked for it here, here, and here? He did what he did the first time, he was right, and he got it. Amen.
Thanks, Sean. Can you just be clear on the 18 days? Did the White House put any security restrictions on Mike Flynn at all during that period of time? Was he limited in terms of his access to classified information, national secrets, or decision-making in any way?
I'm not aware of any. The decision that we made was the right one. The The president made a decision. He stands by it. Jenna.
So I just want to go over the timeline again. You have Yates coming to the White House on January 26th and the 27th. You then have McGahn going to the DOJ on February 2nd to see those documents. But it's not until February 13th that Flynn actually resigns. Well, tell us what happened between, you got this warning, you then saw documents that backed up that warning, and then you have 11 days that pass. What was happening in those 11 days?
I think if you go back in time and look at what we talked about at the time, there were several conversations that occurred with General Flynn between the chief of staff, the general counsel, the vice president, that all occurred then. Look, when you think about the scope of time that actually occurred, those 11 days, to make sure that we did the right thing is important. And we ultimately did, and that's what's important when you think of this. And when you look at this compared to other instances, the idea that in 11 days a review was conducted, the president acted decisively, I think that's actually shows that the system worked properly. John.
Are you guys disputing at all how Yates describes those conversations on the 26th and 27th? She's saying that she came here with great urgency, that she made clear that he had been compromised, that she had evidence that he had been compromised, that this was something that she felt like the White House was going to take action on?
Well, look, I don't think that there's 100% agreement about how she describes everything. But I think generally, as far as the timeline goes, we're fine with it. But I'm not going to nitpick the fact that what her tone was like. I would suggest that the reason that she was asked to come back the second day was because it clearly wasn't that clear on the first day. I think logic dictates you don't ask someone to come back and explain themselves a second time if they have done an effective job the first time. But again, I'm not going to get into needling every little point about what happened. John.
Thank you, Sean. I have two questions on
of course.
Diverse areas. First, a citizens group known as United Against a Nuclear Iran released a list of 16 American companies a few days ago, among them Volvo, Honeywell, and Schlumberger, all of which are cutting back on jobs employing Americans, but all of which expressed a desire to do business in Iran under the terms of the deal that was made with Tehran. My question is this: what is the administration's response to businesses who say they want to do business in Iran under a deal the president described as the worst ever?
I think that speaks for itself. I mean, the president's very clear on what he thinks of the Iran deal, and companies need to abide by the law.
All right. My other question is this. 2 weeks ago, Monday, when the president met with some of us, he said, and it was on the record, he would have an answer on the administration's policy toward the International Monetary Fund in a few days. It's been 2 weeks. Can we expect any time an announcement on what the administration will do regarding the IMF?
I would be glad to follow up on that one and get back to you. Dave.
Sean, the governor of Texas on Sunday signed a law that essentially outlaws sanctuary cities in the state of Texas. Do you view this as a positive step, and would you encourage other states to do the same?
Obviously it's a positive step. I think it shows that, as we've discussed here, both from an economic and a security standpoint, that makes sense for the citizens of our country. Each governor, each mayor is going to have to make their own decisions, but I think the president's position is very clear when it comes to sanctuary cities and how we're going to try to address them going forward. Because it's not just an economic issue, it's not just a jobs issue, but it's a security issue for our country. And so I think ultimately every elected official from the local level all the way up to president needs to feel comfortable with the laws that they're passing to make sure that they're protecting the people. I mean, ultimately that's what every government's first and foremost responsibility is to its people.
What does this mean for the administration's position that these sanctuary cities should not be existing nationally? Will you still take action that denies funding to cities nationwide?
Well, again, I think it's a positive sign. I hope more follow the governor's lead. But we're going to do exactly what the president said and follow through on the executive orders he's made. Major.
So
Sean, you mentioned Director Clapper's testimony yesterday, said no evidence of collusion, but then he was also asked if he was aware of the FBI counterintelligence investigation. He said he was not, and therefore he left the impression before the panel he could not give a definitive answer about the question of collusion. Do you accept that as a valid representation of his knowledge and the fact that this remains an open question?
Sure. I mean, in the sense I'm not going to question, but I think the interesting thing is on all the other issues that he testifies about, everybody takes it as whole cloth, that if he says anything, he must. He was the DNI. So when you guys want him to speak for the entire 17 agencies, you sort of assume that that's what he's doing. In this case, you know, when he's been asked similar questions before and said, well, I can't speak to this case, generally speaking, I've seen nothing. The presumption is therefore he's got to be saying it. In this case, he's saying, I have not and continue to do not see anything that shows an effort of collusion. As the DNI, I would ask you the same question, which is at some point, given all that he was seeing and all that he was given access to, when at some point are you guys going to accept this idea that there was no collusion?
I'm asking you if you accept what he testified.
Sure.
Equally, that they have equal weight. That yes, at the time he said, and the agency said they found no evidence, that is a representative fact that you take as valid, and it's also a representative fact that you take as valid. He was not aware of an FBI counterintelligence investigation, and therefore at this time cannot say conclusively there was no collusion. You give them equal weight, correct?
Sure.
Okay, fine. On Afghanistan, because I think it's important what the president's thinking about. You've been implying that ISIS is a part of the Afghanistan equation. And what I want to ask you about is, as the president looks in Afghanistan, as a team presents him options, are those options primarily about whatever ISIS component is in Afghanistan, or the larger, more malignant issue in Afghanistan, which has always been the Taliban?
Right. So there's, as you know, multiple missions going on to confront those multiple things. The U.S. currently has about 8,400 forces in Afghanistan doing a counterterrorism operation, which is Operation Freedom Sentinel, and then the NATO mission, which is to train, advise, and assist under Operation Resolute Support. The main objective of us being in Afghanistan, from being used as a safe haven for terrorists to attack the United States and our allies, that is the main objective. We remain very focused on the defeat of Al-Qaeda, its associates, as well as the defeat of ISIS-K, which is the ISIS affiliate there in Afghanistan. But that is simply put what the mission is going forward.
And when you suggest that it's a Washington question to ask if 15,000 can do a better job than 100,000, are you suggesting that the ideas the president is being presented with are so original and
No.
out of the box that 15,000 troops can achieve what 100,000 deployed very shortly after 9/11 could not achieve?
No, I'm just suggesting that I think fully refining the mission, what we're seeking to achieve, and that goes back to what Mara was saying. What is the exact objective? How far away are we doing it? What's the time level that we have to have? Can we grow the Afghan force? Is there there are several things that go into a strategy. And I think the idea of just saying, can we throw X number at it, is not the way that the president's looking at these options. He's trying to figure out, walk back from a goal of of eliminating this threat, and then tell me how we get there, as opposed to tell me how many troops we need and then what you're going to do with them. I think that there has been in the past, some instances of just figuring, okay, if we add more troops, that'll help solve the problem. The president's asking to re-look at the entire strategy and then figure out what the footprint is in a variety of ways to get there. That is a different look at what the strategy is versus what it had been.
And one last thing, you suggested that when Sally Yates refused to enforce the executive order, that vindicated the assumption you had that she might not have been a purely well-motivated government servant bringing over this evidence about Michael Flynn. On the other side of that, after Don McGahn looked at the evidence on February 2nd, was in fact Sally Yates' warning vindicated?
I don't know. I don't know what Don saw, so I'm not privy to that.
You told us that led to his firing, so it had to have some legitimacy, right?
No, what led to his firing was that he had misled the vice president.
But wasn't that information about
Again,
those
I cannot get into, and I don't know, frankly, what was in those
Should
materials.
the country not assume that she was vindicated by that review of the evidence?
No, I don't think they should assume anything. I think facts should guide it, and the bottom line is the president fired him for misleading the vice president, and he was. I just said to you, Major, multiple times, and I said at the time. So to go back, at the time that it happened, and right now, we're continue to say that the vice president was misled by General Flynn and the president asked for his resignation. Full stop. John.
Sean, if I could come back to Paris.
You
It's
can.
my understanding that the,
Let's all go.
and one other one after that, too. It's my understanding that the president's initial inclination was to pull out of the Paris Agreement. It suggested as much on the campaign trail. But the situation has become a little bit more complicated. But the knock against the Paris Agreement is that it would have a detrimental effect on the U.S. economy if fully implemented. Does the president believe that there is a way to stay in the Paris Agreement, maybe renegotiate the standards? Because he's under a tremendous amount of pressure from many of his own advisors, other countries, to stay in this agreement to some degree. Does he think he can make changes and still stay in it?
I think the reason that he's seeking the advice of his team is to get options, and then he'll pursue the best one. But I'm not going to tell you which one that he's going to do. That's why he's continuing to meet with the team and to get advice. That's it, plain and simple. Steve.
Well, hang on, I got one other thing. Also, what in the omnibus spending bill that the president signed was a provision to extend the EB-5 visa program. And it's been pointed out that the company that Jared Kushner was recently in charge of has been aggressively reaching out to people in China to say, invest in our property in Jersey City. Remember the EB-5 program, that people that invest a certain amount of money in this country get the sort of golden visa program. Does the president see any potential conflict of interest there?
I think Jared has no affiliation with that company anymore. He recused himself from it, sold his interest in it. So that's a question more for the company itself to ask.
So the president doesn't see any potential conflicts here?
No, I mean, the Jared did everything that was required to make sure that he recused himself and took all the steps necessary. Steve.
Before the briefing, you put out a statement, Sean, that congratulates.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Right.
Yes.
Moon, the liberal who ran in South Korea, he had actively campaigned, suggesting that the president's idea that South Korea pay its fair share of the THAAD missile system is a bad idea. He wants warmer relations with the North. Do you hope to convince him to change his mind?
I think the president looks forward to meeting with him and talking about our shared interests. So I'll wait for that conversation, and I'm sure we'll have a readout for you.
Second question.
Okay.
You did say that the president has an excellent relationship with the National Security Advisor, but there's been a widely circulating column written by Eli Lake that
Right.
quotes the president, two sources, saying that his National Security Advisor is the general undermining my policy. Did the president say that?
No, I don't believe he has. I haven't seen him. I was with, I mean, I think when you look at the president's schedule this week, as I just noted to Sarah a little while ago, there's probably no one aside from family members that are spending more time with the president this week. The General McMaster, he values his counsel. He continues to be extremely pleased with his pick and his performance as National Security Advisor, and he has the utmost confidence in him. Tula.
Thank you, Sean. Just a couple more questions on General Flynn. You keep saying that the White House was given a heads up by Sally Yates about what General Flynn had said to the Russians. She described it differently, saying that she told the White House that General Flynn had been compromised by the Russians and was subject to blackmail by the Russians. Is that the position of the White House now, after seeing all the same evidence that Sally Yates saw, that General Flynn was compromised and potentially blackmailed?
I think, look, we've commented on this. We made a decision based on actions that he took. The president asked for and accepted his resignation. We're not looking to relitigate this.
Don't the American people deserve to know whether or not they're
They need to know that the president took decisive action in this country's best interest. And back to Steve's question, made an excellent choice for National Security Advisor.
by a foreign adversary?
I don't know that you'll know. I mean, that's up for
To that conclusion. so
She
now-
didn't. I think that's. I don't know that that's for her to come to that conclusion without any investigatory method seems a little premature, don't you? I mean, to say that. Hold on, no. But what I'm saying is,
Did the White House investigate whether or not their national
all I'm
security
gonna,
advisor
as
had
I've
been
said
compromised by
multiple
the Russians?
times, we looked into the situation. The president made a decision, and it was the right decision. Jonathan.
Sean, a follow-up on that, but first I wanted to ask you about FBI Director James Comey's testimony before the Senate, which now apparently it looks like the FBI Director gave inaccurate testimony to the Senate. Is the White House concerned that he greatly exaggerated or misstated what kind of contact Huma Abedin had in terms of her emails and sending them to Anthony Weiner?
I have not asked the president or the staff about that, but I mean, I think there's the one issue is I don't think there's any question by any account that there was classified information inappropriately shared on an unclassified system to an uncleared person. I mean, that's, to me, I think what continues to be the takeaway.
But is the White House concerned that the FBI director apparently gave inaccurate testimony?
I don't, at this point, I have not asked, and I'm not fully aware of this. I mean, I'm aware of the testimony that occurred and the inquiries, but I've yet to follow up on that, and I'd be glad to follow up.
Does the president still have confidence, full confidence in FBI Director James Comey?
I have no reason to believe. I haven't asked him, so I have not asked the president since the last time we spoke about this.
And the last time you spoke about it, you said he did have confidence, but you're not sure to say that again now?
Well, I don't, in light of what you're telling me, I don't want to start speaking on behalf of the president without speaking to him first.
And then one follow-up on Flynn. The president, of course, had said that Flynn should ask for immunity before agreeing to testify. Does he still believe that?
I think General Flynn should seek the advice of counsel and take their advice with respect to his investigation and the inquiries into his background. But that's a decision for him and his counsel. Thank you guys very much. Have a great day.
Welcome back. This is the post show for the Sean Spicer press briefing. Hope you enjoyed the briefing. I am Steve Lookner here at Right Side Studios in Auburn, Alabama. We'll be taking your comments and your questions about the briefing. Also, you can call in if you'd like to write in and give your thoughts about the briefing. Happy to read them on the air. You can write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me steve.lookner@rsbn.tv, or you can call in 202-470-0049. And I got to say, for those of you who were worried about there being a lot of General Flynn questions, well, you were probably right to be worried, because there were a lot of General Flynn questions. Jack Posobiec, who was in the briefing room today, was tweeting the number of Flynn questions as they came up. And I think I stopped, the last tweet I saw was like number 11 or 12, but I think there ended up being more than that. So anyways, not surprising. I won't get all into it and get all upset about it again, but I just feel like there's lots of other important things can be asked about, and to be asking, 13 or 14 questions about General Flynn, all of which a lot of which sound very similar, doesn't, I think, help get useful information out to the American public. Anyway, though, I want to hear from you today. And by the way, if you enjoy our coverage of Right Side, if you enjoy our pre and post shows of the briefings and our coverage of the Trump rallies, hope you consider donating, because we rely on your donations to stay on the air, as an alternate to the mainstream media. If you want to donate, you can either go to rsbn.tv/donate, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can click the $sign at the bottom of the chat room, or you can go to www.patreon.com/RSBN and sign up for a monthly donation and get like free RSBN stuff in return. Anyway, so thank you to those who've donated so far and kept us on the air. So let's talk about the briefing, shall we? And I want to first get to, a number of people wrote me during the briefing, and I wanted to get to your comments. IB Dog wrote me during the briefing and said, "That's my Flynn question limit. OMG, I'm out. #MAGA. So IB Dog, I hope you turn back in for the post show, but I can understand. Pokey Rosie wrote in, I had tweeted out a story. Before the briefing, I had mentioned that there was a story out that the White House was maybe going to, that a White House administration official had said there were going to be women on this Senate panel, which as of right now is, the Senate working group on the health bill is just like 13 men and no women. They're the ones like coming up with the text of the Senate version of the health bill. And there was a story out that an administration official had said that women were going to be added to that. But then I sent a tweet out from Leanne Caldwell, who reported that no women have been added to the working group. And Pokey Rosie responded, maybe they had better get on that women know women stuff. So Pokey Rosie, you think that there should be a woman on this group, in this group. Sean Spicer, by the way, was asked about that during the briefing. And if I remember right, he basically said like, yeah, we're all for having more voices on in the Senate working on this, but we're not going to tell Mitch McConnell how to run the Senate and run his working groups. Let's see. Another comment here. Richard P. writes in, enough on General Flynn already. Richard, I feel your pain. I understand. As I've said, my opinion is not that General Flynn stuff should never be reported on, but that the amount of time spent on it is out of all proportion to its actual importance to the country. Let's see. No to the Mark said, the coverage we do here is the best part of the White House press briefings is the pre-show and post-show. We don't need no stinking press pool. Thank you for your kind words. No to the Mark. I had some emails people sent and I wanted to get to as well. Ivan Romano wrote in, I don't understand why the media keep talking about all the men who are working on health care. They imply that if there were more women, there would be stronger pro-choice voice. Most of the pro-choice people that I know are males. They are very vociferous men who I know that strongly support abortion. Is it just me? So, so Yvonne, I hadn't heard specifically, and I'm not saying you're wrong, I hadn't heard specifically people saying we need more women on this healthcare panel because then it would be more pro-choice. I've just heard like some general concerns expressed that, well, without women on the Senate panel, the health bill won't represent women's interests adequately. And as I said before, I do think a group of men, in theory, are capable of coming up with a health bill that represents both genders' interests. But at the same time, it is like this political thing, and regardless of what's theoretically possible, I am aware that that people can get upset if there's not if they don't feel like there's actual people representing a certain group in a certain larger group. So. I think my impression was the concern of people who wanted there to be a woman in this working group is that they were concerned about the health, more general women's issues and not just the choice issue. But maybe there's some people who are concerned about women being on the working group just because they have a specific focus on the abortion issue. So, anyways, I think, though, the media keep talking about it because your question was, you say, I don't understand why the media keep talking about all the men who are working on health care. Well, I think they're talking about it because it's part of our culture now is that given our culture, generally speaking, there are a lot of people who want adequate numerical representation of certain ethnic and gender and other demographic groups in any kind of big government body, and they would not accept that there could be, they would not think that a group all, say, of white men could adequately represent the interests of multiple demographic groups. And the press is reporting on this because A, they know that many of their viewers are concerned about this, and B, many in the press probably share the same opinion. So that's why they're probably reporting on it. Let's see. Old Guy 1947 writes in, but thank you, Yvonne, for writing in. Old Guy 1947 writes in, where do you think the mainstream media is trying to go with all the General Flynn questions? I mean, there's different reasons why they might be asking. It's a good question, Old Guy 1947. Are they going because they think they're going to trip up Sean Spicer? Are they going because they really do think there's something nefarious going on here and they want to get to the bottom of it? Are they going there with their questions because they think their readers care about the General Flynn issue and they want to be seen as asking about it? Maybe are they going because they personally want to be seen as the reporter who got Sean Spicer to say something new about General Flynn? These are different reasons they might have for asking. To me, if I were there and I was a reporter, I would want to ask about something else, but I'm not there. So, good question, Old Guy 1947. Let's see here. Let me check my email. I know there are some emails I need to get to from you. Jason L. writes in, we found the subject is Flynn's firing and waiting 18 days. Jason L. writes, we found out in the hearing that Yates had wanted to give FBI info to McGahn, but then she was fired. I wager that the 18-day gap was because of McGahn had to request to meet with the FBI, and it probably had to be approved, hence it taking longer than usual. So, Jason, your general point is that it took a while because procedural things had to happen. I'm not entirely clear on the procedures you said that had to happen here from your message, but I will say that Sean Spicer, he said something that was somewhat similar to what you said, is that he said that they had to do their own investigation. And he also said that there was some delay in getting actual evidence about the stuff Sally Yates was talking about that the White House could actually look at. So he had suggested some reasons why the firing didn't happen the day Sally Yates walked in there. He also just said, I think he might have said something like, suggesting, this is somebody who we thought was like somebody who was pro-Hillary and pro-Obama, was appointed by Obama, certainly. So, you have to wonder why. There has to be some suspicion of why they're coming in and talking like this, and that had to factor in. So different reasons we can imagine why it wouldn't have happened that day and why it might have taken a while. Now, some people do say, well, they only fired Flynn because it was all this stuff was made public in a Washington Post article. I spoke about that on the pre-show, so I won't go over it all again. But anyways, different views on this. Thank you, Jason L., for writing in. But and I do think, Jason L., I do understand your point that there could have certain, and as Sean Spicer said, there's certainly procedural reasons why it might have taken a bit of time to fire General Flynn, even if they had wanted to. Mike Klonks writes in from Indiana. Mike says, hello, Steve. Unbelievable. Why does Spicer not seek more Skype questions or our questions? These reporters have an obvious agenda. I have respect for General Flynn. He is undeservedly slandered constantly. These reporters are obviously colluding. Is Russia involved? Anyway, Steve, this is so slanted, sickening. Comments from some of the RSBN veteran moderators would be most appreciated and mostly likely valid. With much appreciation for your and generally all RSBN staff, paid and unpaid, Mike Klonks, Indiana. Mike, thank you for writing in. Thank you for your kind words. Like a lot of our viewers, a lot of you are sick of the General Flynn questions, and there were a lot of them today. And I thought I was getting annoyed with them too, personally. And if you want to see why, you can watch the pre-show. But there, we certainly predicted on the pre-show there would be a ton of them asked, and we were not wrong. Let's see. Andrew Sova, you wrote in, I read yesterday that Apple invested $1 billion toward manufacturing jobs in America. I wish they spoke of it in the press briefing. Andrew, I hadn't seen that. Let me do a quick check, Andrew. If I can see if I can find out something about it. Here, Apple, 1 million, and then I'll say jobs. Let's see. Andrew, send me a link if you get a chance, because I can't find it.
Steve, I need to chime in and let you know that Joanne Goldsnyder donated $100 in the Super Chat.
Wow, that's really nice. We just got a donation of $100 from Joanne Goldsnyder, a long-term viewer. She's a long-time donator. So Joanne, that's really...
A gold-level patron member as well.
And a gold-level patron member. Joanne, that's really kind of you and really generous. Donations like that help us stay on the air. As I said before, we're not a big company. We're very, very small. We are constantly trying to make our expenses to stay on the air. And the major part of our operating budget comes from your guys' contributions. So we really do appreciate donations. Joanne, thank you so much. If you'd like to donate and help us out, rsbn.tv/donate. You can go there and donate there. You can click the $sign on YouTube in the YouTube chat, and we'll thank you on the air. And also, you can go to Patreon, make a recurring donation, and get free stuff from us in return. That's www.patreon.com/RSBN. And also, any level of donation, big or small, is welcome. Everything helps. We really appreciate it. Thank you again to the moderators for moderating the chat today. Andrew, I did find some... yes, I see this article. This came out a couple days ago. I see a May 4th article. Apple to launch $1 billion fund to create U.S. manufacturing jobs. So, Andrew, I don't know if this was ever asked about in a press briefing or not previously, since it came out a few days ago. But thank you for letting me know about it. Again, we're taking your comments and questions. This is the post show for the Sean Spicer press briefing. We do one after every press briefing. If you'd like to write to me on Twitter, @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Or we're also taking calls if you'd like to call in and say something on the air and give your opinion. 202-470-0049 is your number. So reach me any of these ways while we're on the air. I don't think I answered all my emails yet. Let me go back and look. I did not. This email is from Julie Hodgson wrote in. Sorry, if the email starts, don't say my name on the air. I'm sorry. My fault. So if I'm reading a tweet, it doesn't say your name there, and I was reading this email, and I should have scanned the email first. Anyways, sent me a link about the federal. Thank you, person whose name I won't say again, for sending me a link about the federal number of judges. Let's see. So this number in Wikipedia. Here it is. Thank you. There are currently 874 authorized Article 3 of the Constitution judgeships, 9 Supreme Court, 179 on the Court of Appeals, and 677 in the district courts. So that's the total number of judges. It's a bit confusing. Somebody wrote to me that there might be more than that, but Wikipedia also lists, I think, the total number of people who've ever been appointed. I think that's like the 3679 number. But in terms of the people who are actually serving now, it seems to be that the number of spots that are currently open, there are 874 total spots in all three, when you combine all three federal court levels. Thank you for writing in. I'm sorry, did I say a million? Andrew, I meant to say a billion. The article sent a billion, so sorry if I misspoke. Brief update on the Hanford nuclear emergency situation, where they had a tunnel collapse at the Hanford nuclear site. No radiation leaks reported yet. They're doing some checks. I posted a picture on Twitter of a robot doing contamination checks, but no reports of contamination yet. So hopefully that ends up being fine and no one gets injured. I want to mention a couple of things that Sean Spicer said in the briefing today.
Light Switch donated $20.
Who did? Light Switch did. Yes, Jake?
Light Switch.
Thank you to Light Switch. Light Switch just donated $20. Much appreciated, Light Switch. We really appreciate it. You help keep us on the air. Light Switch is another person who has repeatedly donated, so thank you, Light Switch. A little bit of a breaking news story that came out. Is it big enough that it qualifies as breaking news? Maybe a news alert. This was announced. I think Sean Spicer announced this at the start of the briefing. I definitely saw it being reported at the start of the briefing. The Pentagon announced that it plans to arm Syrian Kurds in an effort to retake the ISIS so-called capital of Raqqa against the wishes of NATO ally Turkey. So Turkey does not like the Kurds. They consider some Kurds in their country like a terrorist group. But in spite of that, the U.S. is going to arm the Syrian Kurds to help them try to retake Raqqa, where ISIS has set up its quote-unquote capital. So that news came out today. Also, Sean Spicer was asked about the Paris Agreement, about whether Donald Trump had made up his mind on whether to pull out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement of 2015, and he said that President Trump wants more time to come to a decision on it, and he wants to come to a decision on what's best for the U.S. So apparently President Trump hasn't decided yet. We'll see. I have some more things I want to mention about the briefing, but let me just check real quick here. And we have about 10-15 minutes left on the air here, so if you want to write in or call in, you can call in at 202-470-0049 or write to us at Lookner on Twitter or steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Feel free to follow Right Side on Twitter while you're at it, at RSB Network. And also subscribe to us on YouTube if you'd like, and click the notifications bell so you get notifications about all our videos. And I should mention, for those of you watching on Facebook or who sometimes watch us on Facebook, feel free to share our videos. So, we are not a big company. We don't have the money to advertise. So it really helps when you share our video and let other people know about Right Side Broadcasting. B. Morrow sent in me a video called "Leaked Video Will Ruin Obama." I'll have to watch this later. But thank you, B. Morrow, for writing in and sending me a link. There's another email I have to get to, which I haven't gotten to yet. I apologize. Where did my email go? Here we go. This is a message from William Glass. Subject, Sean Spicer's press conference today. William Glass writes, Bill Glass, The obvious bias of the White House press corps is disgusting. They have jumped on General Flynn because that is the low-hanging fruit for the jackals. The objective of the White House press corps is to undermine the Trump administration, from Bill Glass. Bill, thank you for writing in. Bill, I think a number of viewers agree with you. Lots and lots of General Flynn questions today. I don't really think by the end they were adding anything new. But a number of you are really upset with the press, and you feel that they have it in for the Trump administration. And lots of the General Flynn questions today are just evidence of that. I'm very much reminded by, I remember when the Devin Nunes thing was happening, and I said, oh, they're going to ask a ton of questions about this, and I don't think it's that important, and they did. And it's like there's what I get frustrated with is like so often there's like this little story that I think becomes like the dominant story when it shouldn't be, and there's all this focus in the media on that, and all this focus in the media, all in the press briefing on this story, whatever it is, whether it's the General Flynn or the Nunes or the did Attorney General Sessions lie in his Senate hearing, and it's always one of these stories. And it's almost like the tabloid story. I mean, it's not really a tabloid story, but as government stories goes, as politics goes, it's like the tabloid politics story. And what never gets focused on is like the big issues like entitlement reform. Ask more questions about the health bill. Ask more policy questions about the tax bill. Not a lot of policy questions get asked at all. So much that could get asked about, which ultimately will be way more important to the country and just doesn't get asked about, and it's crowded out by this stuff. And that's what bothers me. Let's see here. But thank you for writing in, Bill. All right, let me just make sure I'm caught up on your emails here. And I want to get to some more things that Sean Spicer talked about during the briefing. Okay, Sean Spicer was asked about these reports about President Trump being advised by some of his military advisors to send thousands more troops to Afghanistan. And Sean Spicer said the president wants to rethink the strategy, and he said doesn't want to just throw money or people at it. That doesn't mean he won't ultimately send more forces there, but no decision, according to Sean Spicer, on that either. In terms of the General Flynn stuff, which he was asked about a lot, Sean Spicer said, the process worked, frankly, on the firing of General Flynn. He said, he was asked why it took 18 days to fire Flynn, and he said, just because somebody gives you a heads up doesn't immediately mean you jump the gun. Let's see, what else did he say about that? A couple other things that he was asked about. He was asked about the Texas law that was recently passed there, banning sanctuary cities. And Sean Spicer said it's a positive sign and a step that should be taken by other states. So the administration is on board with the no sanctuary city law in Texas, no sanctuary cities law. Sean Spicer was asked about Lindsey Graham's calling for an investigation of Trump's businesses' ties to Russia, and Spicer said President Trump has no business with Russia, no connections with Russia. Also, there was a question about why President Trump's schedule has been kind of empty lately, at least according to the reporter who asked the question. And Sean Spicer said President Trump was focused on meeting with his team to prepare for their upcoming foreign trip, the one at the end of the month, a couple of weeks actually, which is the trip to Israel and Saudi Arabia, and also to visit the Pope. Okay, so we're going to just take a few more minutes here and wrap things up. If you'd want to get any last questions in or comments, feel free to write in at Lookner on Twitter, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv email. An update from the Hanford nuclear site from Susanna Frame. Eating is now allowed, but some areas are still in lockdown. So things seem to be kind of under control there from the latest. Let me just see if there's anything else that came up about that. I'm not seeing anything else about Hanford right now. Also, Sean Spicer said when he was asked about Lindsey Graham's proposal to investigate President Trump's business ties to Russia, Sean Spicer said he welcomes such an investigation. So this week, we will be covering for you the Sean Spicer briefings. Any breaking news that comes up, we're going to be covering for you. And I'm trying to think if this week there's any other. I haven't heard about any kind of like big executive order signings or President Trump appearances, but who knows? Haven't heard what the next rally will be. We look forward to covering, though. We always enjoy covering the rallies. So we'll see about that. And as I said before, I'll say it again, I'm interested in seeing what the next like big story will be. Not like the General Flynn story, but like what's going to be like the next thing. You know, it was healthcare, and then it was tax reform, it was North Korea. Will there be a next thing? I feel like we're in a bit of a lull right now, but whenever we're in a lull, like something big happens. So I'm kind of waiting for it to happen. So I think right now, let me just make sure I'm caught up with all your comments and questions. I think we're going to wrap it up for now, here from Right Side. I want to say thank you to the moderators for moderating the chat. Thank you to our donators. I know Light Switch donated and Joanne Goldschneider donated. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody for watching. Also, thank you for watching on Facebook, those of you who watched for Facebook today. Thank you to Jake Seals for producing. If you're interested in Jake's music, Jake, where can they go to find your music? You do all the music for Right Side.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Steve. It's rsbnmusic.bandcamp.com, and I do want to throw out an announcement there to the people that enjoy the music. If there are any musicians out there that are interested in the backing tracks to my songs, I recently did a concert for the Patreon members who donate $50 or more a month. They had access to a live stream concert, and I had backing tracks of all of my bigger songs on the guitar, and I played them. So I was thinking I'm going to work on that in the next few days, is get the backing tracks ready for public sale so that you can play along with some of my tracks, and there's a possibility of doing some tutorial stuff in the future for some of the songs that people know, like American Dreamer and things like that. So just throwing that out there. The link is rsbnmusic.bandcamp.com, and I will post on my Twitter when the backing tracks are available.
That concert, by the way, was fantastic, Jake, as I said before. Jake did this concert where he plays all those different songs you hear while watching the Right Side coverage, and he actually explained all the songs and the stories behind them in the concert. Jake, I'm interested in knowing, have you ever found somebody on YouTube, like, you know, take a big band like, like Rush or somebody, and you can find videos of people like playing along with Rush, or they do like, I'm going to do my drum, I'm going to play along on drums with this Rush song. Have you ever found a video where somebody's like playing one of your songs from RSBN, but they're playing along with it?
No, Steve. Nobody knows who I am.
Somebody has to somebody please post one of those.
No, I'm totally kidding, though, actually. I did have somebody that was nice enough. Their son really liked American Dreamer, so I sent them an early backing track at their request, and they sent them back playing my song.
Oh.
And yes, as I jokingly always say to people, American Dreamer is going to be my Milli Vanilli track, my one-hit wonder.
What is, Jake, by the way, the term, when somebody posts a video like that, I feel like there's a term that they use when they're playing along with a track?
Just a live cover, basically.
Oh, they say it's like the guitar cover or drum cover or whatever?
Correct.
You don't have American Dreamer queued up there, do you?
I do. I can play it.
So play like 7 seconds of it so people know what we're talking about.
Okay, I will.
This is American Dreamer from Jake, just so you know if you haven't heard it or you didn't know what we're talking about. It's the one they played during the Trump rallies. Now, Jake, hopefully I can hear it in here. There it is. It's American Dreamer. If you watch the Trump rallies, you've heard this song. I used to hear this song all the time when I was watching the Trump rallies on Right Side. So that's awesome.
Didn't you tell me that you turned it off whenever you heard that song?
No, I never said that, Jake.
Okay, is that fake news?
That was fake news. That's fake news.
All right, get back to the news then.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
so anyways, thank you, Jake, and for producing today, and thank you all for watching. And let me just do one quick check, make sure I didn't miss any of your messages and all of that. Somebody might have said something and they wanted an answer. I think I'm caught up. I'm all caught up. Great. Well, thank you for watching. We'll be back with other Sean Spicer briefings later this week. We'll be back with breaking news stuff. So for now, thank you for watching from Right Side. Enjoy your day.